So for my video presentation, I decided to do it on sweatshops. So from the 18th century to the early 19th century, many immigrants from over the world moved to America. Some moved to poor living conditions in Europe and food shortages, while others moved just to have the American dream. But when they got to America, they soon realized it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. So I found this quote from an old Italian immigrant story, but I didn't know his name. Well, I came to America because I heard the streets were paved in gold. When I got here, I found out three things. First, the streets weren't paved in gold. Second, they weren't paved at all. And third, I was expected to pave them. This was the case for many immigrants. They'd come to America and then they would soon be taken advantage of by the big man or corporate like America type of vibe, because oftentimes they didn't speak English really well and they didn't know exactly what they were signing up for, so they would often get taken advantage of. So with the expansion of the garment industry, business owners were looking for cheap laborers who would work long hours. And this is where the immigrants came in. So coming to a new country is super duper expensive. So multiple families would often live in like the same apartment. And these apartments were really, really small. And every penny counted. So it wasn't uncommon for a whole family to be employed by one company. And while some could stay at home and they would get these like kind of made bundles of clothing that they would have to stitch together and make, and then they would send it back to the company, and the company would often try and find like little flaws in it to make it where they didn't have to pay them as much, when really the flaws, like, there wasn't any there. They were just being nitpicky and trying to save them a buck. So other families would often work at one like main company, and they would do almost the same job, but sometimes they would make like the fabric that they would use, or it was just like different parts of it. Sometimes it would be like the final of just pressing the seams, sewing it, cutting off any loose strings or anything like that. But they had a set number of garments that they needed to make, and they wouldn't be allowed to go home until that was done. And this often resulted in like 14 to 16-hour days, and it was 6 days a week. They would get Sunday off for like religious reasons, but that's it. So there's no age limit on how old you had to be to work in this shop. So this became a place where many children would be. And due to kids like reckless and small like stature, I guess, they would be hurt the most often. And this could vary from like small cuts and bruises, or they could get a full like arm and a leg stuck in a machine and it would rip the full muscle off of the bone, and they would often have to go to the hospital and get their arm amputated due to it being just like completely destroyed. So this led to child labor laws and the eventual banning of sweatshops in America, but they weren't completely gone, and they're not completely gone today. Many garment factories in the United States are still very unsafe and have very similar working conditions, but they're technically not a sweatshop because they somewhat fall in the lines of what's allowed and what's not allowed. But sweatshops are still a very common thing in other countries like Indonesia and China.